I only wish my words could just convince myself that it just isn't real. But that's not the way it feels. Hey guys, it's Mr. Jeff. We're back. I know it's been a little while, but we got to get some new fungal chemistry videos up and running. And this time, I wanted to talk about kind of a repeat on a mushroom we visited before in another video. If you go and find my video on muscarine, maybe I'll drop a link in the video description so you guys can link over to that video. But we're going to continue talking about Amanita muscaria today and some of its cousins that have these compounds in them known as ibotenic acid and its decarbed version, Muscimol. Hey, check that out. We're going to get to that in a minute. But first, if I can make this and maybe even subsequent mushroom chemistry videos more of like open discussion, because to act like I know everything about the biochemistry of these compounds and how they're going to act in my body or yours would be, wow, that would not be true. I don't know these things. I know from the science literature that I read that many of these compounds do affect our bodies and activate certain receptors or are broken down by certain enzymes and have certain processes in our bodies. So I'd like to share what I do know, but maybe you have some insight. You want to leave a comment on these videos, that would be awesome. And maybe you've experienced some of these compounds and you want to give us some anecdotal feedback, please do so. And before we get into this video, if you're new to the Mr. Jeff channel, go ahead and subscribe. As we get through this video, I'd love it if you hit that like button. But let's go on with this. So, Amanita muscaria, probably the most famous, iconic mushroom in the world, that traditionally red with the white warts, the spots on it mushroom, the Alice in Wonderland mushroom, the Super Mario mushroom. In Japan, there's a variation of that mushroom that was known as Ibotenic, which I only bring this up because that is actually where they first isolated the compound ibotenic acid, where it got its name from. I was like, where the heck did they come up with this for the name of this molecule? Well, it actually stems from this word in Japan, which loosely translates to wart Tengu mushroom. I know what warts are and I know what mushrooms are, but I didn't even know what Tengu was. So I had to Google that. Come to find out, it's that in Shinto, it's these certain demons or spirits that are represented by these masks. And I know I might not be doing it justice as to defining what a Tengu is, but if you've seen Tengu masks before, maybe you've seen them as a bright red mask, almost devilish looking. But large noses are common, so I had to draw one of those. You'll see fangs on them and such. Samurai would wear Tengu masks. So there's that. Now you understand where we get this name from, ibotenic acid. Ibotenic acid is an NMDA receptor agonist, meaning it actually works the receptors. It excites them or activates them, and these are excitatory receptors, so it actually causes excitatory activity, even to the point of neurotoxicity. What does that all mean? That means if you consume compounds like ibotenic acid or similar NMDA and glutamate receptor agonists, those could be actually glutamate. That's an amino acid. Glycine is another amino acid that'll cause excitatory activity on the neurons and these receptors. So too much ibotenic acid in your system could actually lead to things like convulsions. Like you could actually start to have seizures in high enough doses. And they actually use this compound in, I guess, in lab rat studies where they can inject it directly into the brains of these rats, causing lesions. So if they want to actually cause brain damage, this chemical is what they'll use in many cases when they're doing these research on cellular activities in these rats. So for what it's worth, I wanted to throw that at you. But this compound, I don't want to say it's not important. it is important because some of your side effects from consuming Amanita muscaria might be from that compound if it wasn't properly decarboxylated. So what's commonly done is they'll take the mushroom caps or whatever, the Amanita muscaria, and they'll dehydrate, they'll dry them, because in the drying process decarboxylation occurs. And decarboxylation on a chemistry level looks something like this. You take this ibotenic acid molecule, and this group right here will actually, this is a carboxyl group consisting of a double bonded oxygen to this carbon here, and also the hydroxyl bind it to the carbon here. Carbon needs 4 bonds, so it gets 1 off this oxygen, 2 off this one, and it gets another one coming off of it here as it binds to this other carbon. So what happens though is when it breaks off through heat or just naturally from the dehydration process, this breaks free. I want to break free. So that carbon that was right here is this carbon here, and it still has that double oxygen, but it also gets another double oxygen as that hydrogen right there, I believe, gets linked down here. We don't mark the H's on all the points, but there will be hydrogens wherever there's not anything shown on here linking up to the carbon that's not written there too. So I imagine that's what's taking place, is you got this now just being the carbon with the hydrogen. That hydrogen now is gone, so this, it gets a double bond because the carbon wants to bind in 4 spots, basically 2 to each oxygen. So that floats off. During decarboxylation, you could literally measure the carbon dioxide off gassing from the compound going up into the atmosphere or whatever, leaving behind this new similar molecule called Muscimol. You could almost take this molecule and stack it right on top of that one, and they'd overlap. That amine group here, that kind of, in the picture here, I draw it with this little funny, like this really thin acute angled triangle looking thing. That just indicates that in the 3D of this molecule, it actually comes toward us. Well, in this case, it no longer has to find that polarity balance. If it's coming toward us, it's only doing so through the electric attraction and repulsion qualities of these different atoms. Well, without that up here, it doesn't do that anymore. So, hey, I'm just nerding out a little bit, showing you the molecular differences of these. Very similar though, but this one difference, you see glutamate and glycine and some of these other glutamate receptor agonists depend on this formation right here, and that's where they're binding. That's gone on here, so it no longer is an NMDA receptor agonist at this point. It now is a GABA receptor agonist, I believe. So you're getting a different response, and the consensus from my reading in the literatures of what muscimol functions like on these receptors, if it's attacking or if it's activating a GABA receptor, then I imagine it would function similarly to other common GABA receptors or GABA receptor agonists like ethanol, your alcoholic beverages, maybe your benzodiazepines like Ativan. What's the other names of these chemicals, these drugs? Xanax, right? So some of these benzos, they call them. You got your benzos and alcohol, and the effects that come from them would be from their agonism of the GABA receptor in their different forms and fashions. The GABA receptor is a fairly complicated receptor with different binding sites. So just because it's a GABA receptor agonist doesn't mean it's going to affect it the way others do. And in this case, this does not affect it in the same way as alcohol. So you're not going to get an alcohol effect from muscimol. You get more similarly an effect like Ambien, which is a GABA receptor agonist in its own way, but in a similar fashion to muscimol. So you could almost say, and I say this kind of half jokingly, but you could refer to Amanita muscaria and the compound muscimol as Ambien of the woods, since we like to give all these mushrooms common names. So you might want to call that ambient of the woods just to be silly. But there you go. Muscimol probably could be regarded as a toxin depending on dosage, because like I said, you affect these neurotransmitter receptors like glutamate receptors or GABA receptors, and you're messing with certain bodily functions that could actually lead to death in a high enough dose. So these are drugs that can have harmful effects if you're not careful. So consume mushrooms wisely. Be safe about these things. Maybe do your homework. If you got any feedback about any of this, definitely leave me the comments in the video. Like I said, we might even explore this topic a little bit further. I just wanted to get back on track of doing some mushroom chemistry videos on the side of my ugly Suburban and keep this YouTube channel alive and growing. So thank you for watching this video with me. It's Mr. Jeff, Pennsylvania's favorite rockstar mushroom hunter. And as a side note, and kind of putting a timestamp on this video, it's summer 2024, and you will get to see me at MycoFest this year. Come out to MycoFest. That's going to be in Central PA up there by State College, specifically Center Hall, PA. Get on the internet and look up MycoFest and get your tickets. Come out and see Mr. Jeff this summer up there with the rest of the crowd up there, and let's have a great time. And until next time, peace.